The electric type is strong and powerful. The main issue they have is they're a bit fresh. So I decided it was time to get on Pokemon Sword and do a Hardcore Nuzlocke with them. Now, none of the starters in this game are actually electric type, therefore I carry on to the first route and I catch myself a Blipbug. However, that's still not an electric type until it evolves, therefore we can't use it quite yet. I catch him and give him the name Chucky. Thankfully though, it's not too long until we run into our next encounter, and this one is actually electric off the bat. Being a Yamper, I end up catching it and calling it Tommy. After that, I get a train down and I decide to watch a video, and obviously the guy's really good, so I subscribe to his channel. Now that we've finally made it to the wild area, I can catch my next Pokemon, being an Electrike. She gets the name Angelica, and we can progress further. While I'm here, there's another bit of the wild area where I can actually run into Jolteon. Therefore, I decide to grab one of them, and they get the name Phil. We then get to start in the championship, and they allow us to pick the number that we're going to have on our back. Nice. We then try to check into our hotel, but there's some ruffians at the front desk. The least they could do is actually get clothes that fit them, though. Go to the tailor, son. Anyway, once they're taken down, it's the next morning, so we're okay to suit up. We get to see our number in all its glory and head on to the field. We get to see all the gym leaders walking onto the pitch in some sort of Avengers-style war. And after that ceremony's done, we can carry on and we can do a battle with Bede. She's incredibly easy to take down, and I cannot imagine a time when it's going to be any different. I would later learn to regret saying this. We then see a little Pikachu running around in the grass, so we go to... Oh, no, do not catch that. Find another one, quickly, go. Yep, so we find another one, and we can catch that, and we give it the name Lil. Jesus, that was a close one. Could have got in some big trouble for that. We then have the joy of formally introducing ourselves to the beast that is Milo. However, before I take it on, I decide I want to get a new belt, so I just dig it up from under this rock. I then learn I'll be pretty good as a Welshman, as I can herd these sheep fairly easily. Before we begin this gym battle though, I decide it's time for Chucky to evolve. This allows him to finally be used on the team, ready to go into the first gym leader. However, we have some bug types and I have the expert belt, so this goes by incredibly quickly. Even though I made the mistake of switching to Bug Bite because I forgot I had Compound Eyes and Fury Cutter couldn't miss, that did mean I had to switch out to another Pokemon, but we got the win regardless. We can then move on to the daycare where we actually are able to get a Toxel for free. I give it the name Dill and look forward to using the Toxtricity. We then have Team Yell deciding to bully a doctor, but we decide to fend them off, and in return he gives us a bye. After this, I decide I want a slight vacation, so I make my way to the Isle of Armor. Do run into a bit of a weirdo beforehand, but I suppose I can't moan about being a weirdo because I came here to shake some trees. This gives me my Emolga, I can catch it and give it the name Susie. Trying to get to the next gym, we discover she's not there, therefore we need to go and visit her by the lighthouse. And she's supposed to be a water trainer, right? So why in the world is her belt floating? Like, it's not attached to anything, it's generally floating. That's more of a psychic trainer's sort of a deal. At this point in the game though, I decide it's time I want to evolve some people, so I go to the Digging Bros and try to get a Thunderstone or two. Unfortunately, with the Watts we have, we actually only end up getting one Thunderstone, and this means the only Pokemon we can evolve at this point is our Pikachu. After that, I decide it's time to go fishing in the town. We end up catching a Chinchou, and she gets the name of Kimmy. It was actually at this point I realized, like, this name theme, I'm going to be running out of names if they all end up being female, and that is pretty much what happens for the rest of the run. Props to anyone who can guess the name theme, though, because I'm imagining a lot of you won't have a clue. With all that, I decide it's time to go and take on Nessa. She leads Goldeen as I lead with Lil. And the Goldeen is pretty weak, so it only takes us one spark to take it out. After this, we've got Arakuda, and I think this is the perfect opportunity to set up a Reflect. It ends up doing abysmal damage to me with an Aqua Jet, and I can take it out on the next turn using one spark. I was actually using Light Clay on my Raichu as well, so the Reflect's going to last for 8 turns, giving us plenty of time to take out Dreadnought. The first turn it's out, I know it's going to do some pretty major damage, so I decide just to use a Protect and manage to soak up most of it. Then the second turn, I decide I don't want it to be faster than any of my Pokemon, therefore I opt to go for a Thunder Wave. After that, it sets up a Max Geyser, which does do some serious damage to me and sets up Rain. This isn't ideal. Now, I can't stay in much longer against this thing, and I decide the best one to switch out to is Kimmy, being a water type, so it resists the Max Geyser. I go for a Confuse Ray, and the Dreadnought actually ends up getting paralyzed, meaning I have another chance to use a turn on Kimmy. I decide it's time to use a Spark, but he uses a Razor Shell against me and gets the Defense Drop. This means it's no longer safe to stay in. The one I bring out is Chucky, as he's incredibly tanky, and he actually has the move Mud Slap. This lowers accuracy, hoping that he'll miss a couple of attacks. He does miss the first one against Chucky, but at this point I also kinda don't want to stay in as the Reflect's about to wear off. I bring in Tommy, who thanks to edging has actually managed to get to level 25 at this point. The reason this is allowed is because if you're in the battle where the level cap is going to be finishing, you're allowed to overlevel. Just letting you guys know about it now, as I do use it a few times down the line. It turns out that Confuse Ray was completely pointless, as he doesn't end up hitting himself at all and he snapped out of it when I switch in. He also ends up hitting me with a high roll on the Razor Shell as I'm coming in, and this means I can't stay in even with the help of my Oranberry. Now, at this point, I end up just pointlessly switching around a load of Pokemon. Thankfully, none of them end up getting taken out, and the one I end up taking him out with is Chargerbug. I should have just kept it in on the turn it was in, because we'd have taken it out a lot sooner, and I wasted a lot of time and risked a lot of Pokemon being taken out here. Completely my bad. After that battle, Tommy evolves into a Boltund, and we go for some dinner with Chairman Rose. Now, I'll tell you what, I wish I had the confidence of this man. Not being able to wear pants in public would be so liberating. We end up having another bead fight as we progress, but honestly, it's that easy at this point that it's not worth commentating over. We then have Angelica evolve into a Manectric, and we're introduced into Cabu, who's training up a Corko. After this, Marnie actually ends up wanting to fight us. I lead with Angelica, and she leads with Krogunk. Krogunk cannot withstand the pain of 2 discharge and goes down. We then have Scraggy, who takes about a third from discharge, but I know it's probably not wise to take it out. Therefore, I bring in Phil, and thanks to his compound eyes, Fury Cutter cannot miss and wipes through the rest of her team. After this, it's time to start Cabu's trial, during which Kimmy actually ends up evolving into a Lantern. Obviously, once his trial is done, we're ready to take on Cabu, and he even shows us the respect of walking on the pitch with us. He leads with Ninetales, as I lead with Kimmy. The Ninetales does manage to get off a Will-O-Wisp burning us, but the Bubble Beam manages to take it less than half. It then uses a quick attack on us for very little damage as we take it out. After this, he sends out Arcanine, who tries to intimidate us, but we're using special attacks, so it doesn't matter, and we can just go ahead and use Bubble Beam. 2 of these will take the Arcanine out. We then have Center Scorch come out, and the burn damage plus an attack when he's Dynamaxed is probably going to take me out, so I decide it's time to bring in Angelica. He goes for Max Butterfly, which doesn't manage to take us out, but obviously I'm going to be too low, and I need to waste a couple more turns until he's no longer Dynamaxed. I do this by tanking the remaining attacks with both Tommy and Chucky. Now, at this point, I know he's going to be going for a Flame Wheel, so I decide to bring in Kimmy just to manage to tank the damage. Because Kimmy's out, I know he's not going to use Flame Wheel, and he's going to go for Bug Bite instead. This means it's free for me to bring in Susie. And with the minor damage that Bug Bite does to us, we're able to use 2 Acrobatics and take it down. After this, we're able to go to the next section of the wild area and not be overwhelmed. And Hop ends up running off with Bead. Now that we've got some new areas, I managed to go and catch myself a Helioptile. She ends up getting caught and called DD. We then get the joy of Chargerbug finally being able to evolve into a Vikavolt. We then discover Hop was humiliated, and I'll be honest, I didn't realize Bead was male either. We then are introduced to Raihan, and from the looks of it, he is the chillest guy to exist. I mean, just look at that facial expression. He's so relaxed. We then run into Team Yell, who are bullying a Cobra for being a bit silly. After we beat them down, an old lady comes over and gives us her card. Now, I don't know what vibes I was giving off, but I'm not interested in you that way, love. We finally get to the point where Toxel can evolve into a Toxtricity, and then I run into a woman who's willing to restore some weird, crazy freak of nature being Arctazol. I give it the name Stu. I then decide it's time to go play some games on the PC. And Phil was having such a good time of it, he evolves into a Galvantula. All that done, we have the joy of facing down B. She starts with Hitmontop as I start with Susie, and obviously this thing cannot withstand an acrobatic. At this point, Pangoro comes out, so I decide to bring in Kimmy. I knock him to about a third health, but with his workups and a Night Slash, he knocks me to a point where I need to switch again. I bring out my buggy boy Chucky, and he can finish him off with a Bug Buzz. We then have Surfetch come out. Now this thing loves to protect, so I decide it gives me a free switch into Lil. Lil can then set up a Light Clay boosted Reflect, and then we can use Spark to get a bit of damage, plus when it hits me, Static actually activates. Now, I know he's going to be going to a fighting move, so I decide it's safe to bring in Susie. Obviously with the health left, we can take it down with 1 Acrobatics, and then out comes her Machamp. However, it does not stand a chance. Even in its Dynamax form, all it takes is 2 acrobatics and we have taken it down. And I Fury Cutter through bead. It's amazing that I crush him. He then gets taken away by the authorities, and after they've all disappeared, the wall falls down and releases an unearthed treasure. I'm claiming this as mine. I want the money for it. It definitely wasn't Bede that unearthed it. It was me, completely me. Don't believe anyone if they say differently. Now that I'm rich, I can head on to the Glimwood Tangle. During that, Dee decides it wants to evolve into a Heliolisk. Now, I've actually been terrible with XP management on this entire playthrough, therefore I can only bring 5 people into the gym challenge. If I bring any of the others, they're actually risking overleveling. Thankfully, Wiseglass's Heliolisk manages to sweep through this entire thing. I then get scared as it says you want to challenge the gym leader straight away and you can't say no and carry on. Thankfully though, once you have said yes, you can actually back out through the entrance. This makes it so I'm able to access my box again and I can fill my team up with the Pokemon I want. And with that, we've got Opal. Obviously, I start off with Dee and he does major damage to the Weezing. I then discover she loves to call herself the Wizard. Interesting. The Weezing's somewhat low at this point, so I can actually switch to a Parabolic Charge to give me the health back while also taking it out. She then brings in her Mawile, who can go down to 2 Thunderbolts, and all she does in this time is use an Iron Defense, meaning I got it for free. After this is her Togekiss. Now, I've had my special defense buffed, so she really can't do much to us. Therefore, I do a Parabolic Charge as she does minimal damage with Draining Kiss, and opt to use Volt Switch on the turn that I'll be taking it out so I can choose a Pokemon to bring in. The Pokemon I choose to bring in is Dee. Now, I thought this thing would do more damage, but I actually forgot to equip a decent move onto it. I noticed, therefore, it's pointless for me to be using Acid, so I just go for a Toxic instead. After this, though, I am quite a bit on the low side, so I need to switch out. Therefore, I bring in Dee again. He can just use a couple of Parabolic Charges to get his health up, meaning we can't be taken out, and the Toxic eventually finishes her off. That's 5 gym badges and an old woman's last battle done. However, she does want to punish us, so she makes us walk to Hammerlock with her. However, I am kind of thankful because we get to see this interaction where she falls in love with Bede. Even though he's no longer a challenger, he may be gym leader material. We then carry on a bit further and run into a Morpeko. We end up calling it Charlotte. Straight after this, we're able to get the Pokemon that is Togedemaru, and we call that Betty. And with that done, we get to start the next gym trial. Obviously, I'm a natural at it. First time clear. And with all that done, we can start off and do the gym battle versus Gordy. He starts with Barbaracle as I start with Dee. I gave Dee the Wise Glasses and that ensures that he finishes this thing off fairly easily. And then we have the Pokemon known as Shuckle. I use a Thunderbolt on it to do some decent damage as it hits me with a Rock Tomb. The Rock Tomb doesn't do much damage, but it is lowering my health, so I decide just to use a Parabolic Charge as this will actually counteract the amount of damage he does to me. I go for another Parabolic Charge as I want to knock him into the red for the next turn. On that turn, I know I'm going to take him out, so I decide to go for a Volt Switch, ensuring that I'm able to bring in my Raichu. He brings out Stonejourner, but I've taught myself Brick Break, and I know he's going to try and use a move that swaps his special defense and defense. That's why I've gone with this move. This allows me to take him out in 2, and it's not going to help the next Pokemon out either. The final Pokemon being his Corko. Now, I know this thing can do some pretty major damage to all my Pokemon, so I figure on the first turn, we need to set up a Reflect. Because of that Reflect, his Max Flare only manages to do about 1/3 damage in health to me. And at this point, I know I want to waste some of his Dynamax turns, so I decide to use Protect on the next one to ensure that he's not going to take me out. Then it's a case of it being his last turn, so I decide to switch out by using Volt Switch to get a bit of chip damage and bring it in Kimmy. Obviously, a reflected Max Flare is going to do nothing to Kimmy. And after that, I make the decision to use a Thunder Wave, hoping that I can get a few turns of Paralysis. Now, the sun is up, and this thing has a pretty powerful ability being Steam Engine, so I can't afford to hit it with a Water-type move as it'll up its speed way too much. Therefore, I opt to use a couple of Discharge to knock it low. And by the time the sun actually runs out, we've got him in range of being able to be taken out by a quad-effective Bubble Beam. So we do that and we get the 6th gym badge. We then get invited to a steak restaurant to eat with Hop and Sonia. However, we don't get to eat at all. That's so disappointing. I was looking forward to it. We then have the joy of finally facing Hop in battle. I start with Dee as he starts with his Dubwool. I managed to do some pretty serious damage to it with Thunderbolt, but it returns with a takedown. Obviously though, I'm faster, therefore it's taken out the next turn by using a Volt Switch. I decide the best Pokemon for me to bring out is Kimmy, just in case he brings out his Cinderace. And he does do exactly that. However, obviously Cinderace is a fire type. I've got Mystic Water on, so Bubble Beam manages to annihilate it. After that, he brings out his Snorlax, and this thing's actually pretty scary, so I opt to bring in Lil. The idea was he wouldn't be doing too much damage, but he actually knocks me incredibly low. Therefore, I decide just to let the Hail do a bit of chip damage by using some Protects. Obviously, we're not going to stand much of a chance, therefore, I decide to bring in Chucky. I do this because I've taught Chucky Dig, so I can take advantage of it by using Dig to let him get a bit more Hail damage and then attacking him slowly. Along with the Hail, we get him knocked incredibly low, and I'm pretty confident that if I use a Protect, I can get him knocked to the point where I'll take him out in one hit. However, it turns out I was massively mistaken. I go for the Dig, and he just holds on, literally with a pixel of health. This means that although he doesn't actually knock me out with the Body Slam, the Hail takes us both out on that turn. Huge mistake on my end, obviously misjudging the attack, and it's definitely cost us a vital member as he's one of the best Pokemon we get in this run. It does, however, mean the rest of this battle is free as we get a free switch into DD, who can heal himself up on the Corviknight with a Parabolic Charge. And then all that's left is the Pincurchin, so it's just a matter of using a few Bulldozes and then switching for a few Pokemon to make sure we're not losing any of them thanks to his curses. Hop is an incredibly easy trainer. I don't know how I lost a Pokemon to him there. Very bad judgment on my end. I'm then able to get another encounter being Pincurchin. We catch it and give it the name Lou. We then have Marnie show us through the back door so we can get into Spikemuth. Piers is having a nice music session, but obviously we've got to ruin it to get the 7th gym badge. Piers starts off with Scrafty as I start off with my Susie. He goes for a Fake Out as I start off with my Emolga. Static activates on this, and then I use an Encore to make sure that he can't touch me for the next few turns as all he's got is Fake Out. This means I can bring in Phil, and Phil is just strong enough to be able to withstand the damage from him but set up a few Fury Cutters. At full strength, the Malamar stands no chance against the Fury Cutter, and out comes his Obstagoon. Now, this thing's actually pretty good, pretty tanky, and pretty fast. Therefore, I know I can't stay in, so I opt to switch out. I pick Kimmy as it's pretty tanky, and then on the first turn it's in, I set up a Thunder Wave to stop it from using its Obstruct. After that, all I need to do is use a few Bubble Beams and Discharges, and we take the Obstagoon down. And then we've got Stunky. Now, I know this thing's going to be using a Poison move, so I bring in Betty as that stops it from doing it. And at that point, the only move he can use against us is Sucker Punch. Therefore, I decide just to switch in and out between Dill and Betty, as they've got the immunity for the Pokemon. And the moment we've managed to get rid of all his Sucker Punches, we can start attacking. Dill shows the exact power of music by using 3 overdrives and winning us the 7th gym badge. We then have a crowd of people just in the way as I'm trying to get through a tunnel. Like, come on, I can't fit. Before the next gym, I decide it's time to go back to the Isle of Armor, and I catch myself a Dedenne. Gets the name Kira, and we can carry on with the adventure. And with that, we are now ready for the final gym leader, being Raihan. It's a double battle though, so it's quite different, and he leads with his Flygon and his Gigalith. This means that I decide to lead with Kimmy and Lil. I get Lil to use a Reflect as I get Kimmy to set up a Rain Dance to get rid of Gigalith's special defense tankiness. After that, I double into the Gigalith by using a Brick Break on Lil and a Brine on Lil. This is enough to take him out, and a Breaking Swipe does barely nothing once we've got the Reflector. He sends out his Sandaconda, but it disappears just as quickly as it came into a Brine, as Flygon takes a bit of a Brick Break. This does mean, however, he sends out his Duraludon. Now, I'm pretty confident this thing's going to go for a Dragon move, and I know Flygon's going to. Therefore, I decide to switch Lil out with Dedenne, who's a Fairy type, and makes it immune. Flygon is obviously 4 times weak to an Ice Beam, therefore that takes it out in 1. Now, this Duraludon's pretty powerful, therefore I decide to use Kimmy to use a Protect and waste a bit of his attack, while I Charm it with Dedenne to lower it. We then have the next turn. Obviously a double Protect is unlikely to work, therefore I decide to go for a Rain Dance and Charm combo instead. That being done, Duraludon has used all his Dynamax turns up, so I can finally start to attack this thing. I Charm it one more time, and I know this thing cannot KO me with any of its moves, and it uses a Body Press against Kimmy. Oh, it can crit, and it took Kimmy out. That's dreadful. Damn, we lost a Pokemon. It does give us a free switch in, but unfortunately, that is a loss of a Pokemon that I really wanted to battle him again later. The combination of Dee Dee and Kira is more than enough to take out the Duraludon, as I can just use a couple of Thunderbolts, a Volt Switch, and a Play Rough, and he's gone. That's our second death of the run in this battle, but 8 gym badges down and only 2 deaths, I don't think that's too terrible. Sonia then gets the ability to suit up and she becomes a professor. We then have another train ride, and I remember I didn't like the video from before, so I go back and do it right now. We then do have to battle Marnie, but I'm not even going to bother commentating over this because this battle is such a joke. It goes by so easily. Volt Switch is giving us a lot of switch-ins and chip damage, and Acrobatics on Emolga is just mental. Therefore, she doesn't really stand any chance. After this, we have the final battle against Hop. I start off with Lil, who can set up a Reflect to stop this thing doing so much damage. After this, I can switch out to Dee Dee, who can manage to keep itself healthy while taking him out with a couple of parabolic charges. He then sends out Snorlax, and I was a bit dumb here. I really should have Volt Switched out, but I just hard switched into Susie. That means that there's no chip damage. Now, I was expecting to use high horsepower, and then I could Encore him into it, but he didn't, so I Volt Switched back out into Dee Dee. I then this time remember to use Volt Switch with Dee Dee to bring Susie back out, as he's going to be on low enough health at this point where I know I can take him out if I use an Acrobatics. He then brings his Pincurchin in, so I bring Dee Dee in, who can get off a Bulldoze but gets hit for some severe damage with the Poison Jab. I know, however, a Poison Jab will do next to nothing to Dill, so I can bring him in, and he's got the powerful move that is Boom Burst, and obviously it one-shots this thing. He then sends out his Corviknight. Now, I could obviously one-shot this thing, but I know his Cinderace is coming out next, and it's going to be Dynamax, so I've got to be careful. I do this by switching into Lil, who manages to set up a Reflect. Once the Reflect is up, I decide to switch into Dee Dee, as all I'm going to need to do is use a Parabolic Charge. This will get me incredibly healthy and take it out. Well, I thought it was going to take it out. At least I was right about the healthy bit, though. It did use a Scary Face on me, though, so I decided it's best to Volt Switch out. However, he does heal on this next turn. Not that it helped, though, as Volt Switch is more powerful than Parabolic Charge, so it finishes him off. I decide since his Cinderace is coming out, the best Pokemon to bring out is going to be Lil. This is because this little bugger has Charm, and it can lower the attack of the Cinderace. With the help of Protect and these charms, I can wait until Cinderace isn't Dynamaxed anymore, and then I can switch out and bring in Dill. He does a lot more damage than I was expecting. It's because I forgot to account for the Sunlight. Therefore, I'm pretty confident he's going to go for another fire move, so I bring out my Morpeko. Unfortunately for me, though, I was incorrect. He actually uses Counter, which does some pretty serious damage. However, thanks to the fact it let me get a Spark off, I can then bring Emolga in. Now, Emolga can't be one-shot, and Acrobatics is guaranteed to kill. Therefore, we've beat Hop for the final time. Serves the bugger right for killing one of my Pokemon before. We then get the joy of coming onto the news who are asking us questions about Hop. Obviously, I'm going to turn around and say he was trash. Incredibly easy. He's exactly the rival that I knew he was. That's not a compliment, by the way, buddy. Dude. You're aware that's a wall, right? And now we've learnt of the dastardly plan that Oleana had. Therefore, we've got to take her out. She leaves with Frostlass as I leave with my Toxtricity. Thankfully, all she does is double team, and although I missed the first hit, I managed to hit the second one, and it's an Oko. After this, she makes a very questionable decision and brings out her Milotic. Obviously, this thing is going to go down to 1 overdrive. So Lazzle does get a hit off, but follows the same fate. Now, it's smarter here to go for a Boom Burst as she actually resists Overdrive, but she does manage to live on just a sliver. This puts me on low health, but it doesn't stop me from taking her out. After that, she's got a Gastrodon, but I have a Flying type and a Steel type. Therefore, I waste all of her Dynamax turns without her even touching me. I then use Emolga to just switch out to different Pokemon, as I know he's going to go for poison moves and I know he's not going to do much damage. Once these Volt Switches have added up, we are able to take it out using 1 Acrobatics, and that is one of the easiest battles I've had to do to date. Leon talks Rose down, and as you can see, he must have got a bit emotional as he looks very close to crying here. And with all that done, we can finally start the Grand Finals. But Bede is here to ruin our day. She leads with Mawile as I lead with Lil. I charm this thing down till it's at -6 attack, and then I set up a light screen. At this point, I've taken some insane damage, so I opt to go for a Volt Switch to bring in my Galvantula. Obviously, it's at -6 attack, so a Play Rough does Almost all of my health. That is my plan entirely ruined. Now, you might notice my team is a bit weird. This is mainly because I had to be really careful about overleveling, so I kind of brought all my cannon fodder. Basically, this is the absolute worst time that I could ever be crit at. The idea was I could tank a few hits and be able to set up Fury Cutter to be at its max for anything coming out, but because that's no longer a possibility, I opt to go for a discharge as she heals up. I'm faster so it can't touch me and another discharge takes it out, but obviously I'm incredibly low health for the next Pokemon. I go for a discharge against the Gardevoir, but I should have gone for a Fury Cutter, as had I done that, I would have actually managed to take this thing out. As you can see, the second turn I use it, it's only just built up and it does just as much as the discharge did. However, because I didn't do this and I've allowed it to get off a Calm Mind, it takes Galvantula out. At this point, I decide the best thing to do is bring out Betty, as it can use one Zing Zap and the Gardevoir is gone. Now, even though I did get a bit unlucky, I do get very lucky against the Rapidash, as both my Zing Zaps that hit it managed to make it flinch. This means I can take it out with no worries. And then we have her last Pokemon, Hatterene. Now, I know this thing's going to Dynamax, so that's pretty scary, but I can hit it with a Zing Zap to get some decent damage off on it. It goes for a Max Flare, and I'm Steel type, so obviously this is going to be taking me out. I then have no idea what to do. Therefore, I opt to bring in Kira, as Super Fang is guaranteed to knock it down a certain amount of health. It does hit, but it doesn't do as much as I expected, because I forgot Dynamax doesn't take the full damage from it. Unfortunately, a Max Mindstorm does hit me though, and that is me gone. After that, all I can do is bring out Charlotte. Now, Bede has done an absolute massacre here, and it's not stopping until after this turn. I can get off a Crunch, which does some pretty mental damage, but it does mean that I've got to sacrifice this Pokemon. Remember when I foreshadowed Bede being a nightmare? Yeah, she's just wiped out 2/3 of my team. On the plus side though, she is now low enough where I can just bring Arctozolt in and one Ice Beam takes her out. There are a couple of poor plays there on my behalf, but like that crit just completely annihilated my strategy. And because I was having to play with the Pokemon I haven't really used, I just wasn't thinking straight. That being done though, we can actually start the finals, the first one being Nessa. I start off with Lil, as she starts off with her Golisopod. Now, this thing's basically guaranteed to go for first impression, so I use a Protect to stop it from hitting me with it. Then after that, I'm pretty confident it's going for a Swords Dance, so I can set up an Agility. At this point, the Golisopod goes down to one Thunderbolt, and then she sends out a Barraskewda. Now, this is actually the reason I set up the Agility. I would have been slower than it without it. Therefore, I'm faster than it now and can take it out in one. Seaking and Pelipper follow the exact same fate. I don't really know why Pelipper didn't come out first though, a Swift Swim would have helped her out a bit. Now, Dreadnought's a pretty powerful Pokemon, and I know it can do some serious damage to me. Therefore, what I do is I use a Protect on the first turn it comes in, and then you'll notice that I actually brought Pincurchin. Now, I brought this for the simple fact as a sack. I knew I was probably going to lose something because this Dreadnought is crazy powerful, so I just bring it in to waste the final 2 Dynamax turns. I then bring out Arctozolt, who should be able to finish it in 2 Freeze Dries, but unfortunately it's got the special defense buff from the Sandstorm. This means the Freeze Dries aren't enough, and it's lowered my speed to the point I'm actually slower than it, therefore I need to switch out. I opted to bring in Angelica, but she actually heals on the next turn. Now, at this point, I've got a Magnet on this guy, and he actually manages to one-shot it with a Discharge. After that, we have the battle versus B. She leads with Howlucha, and I lead with a Molga, but the Howlucha isn't powerful enough to survive an Acrobatics. Unfortunately for me, though, the Phalanx has one range where it does survive, and it happens to get it, meaning it can hit me heavy with a Rock Tomb. I can't stay in at this point, and I'm still faster even with the speed drop, so I opt to go for a Volt Switch, but she does heal it up, unfortunately. I Volt Switch into Angelica, which uses one Discharge, and that is the Phalanx gone. And this thing with its Magnet Boost makes very short work of both the Surfetched and the Grapple-Locked. She then sends out Machamp, and I really can't get a free switch into this. Therefore, I decide it's time for Manectric to say goodbye. I get 2 Discharges off, which is definitely worth it as it knocks it into the yellow. And with the amount of damage she manages to do, her sacrifice was not in vain. It means Susie can come in for free, use 1 Acrobatics, and we've taken B down yet again. We now have the Raihan battle, and I've just noticed something in post of this. I've actually cheated here. I've got Pincurchin on my team, where I should have had Boltons because I've already lost Pincurchin, but because I was coming from it the next day after, I'd forgot about that, and yeah, no, that's entirely my bad. In my opinion, it really doesn't affect the rest of the run. However, this is definitely an asterisk on this. I'm going to have to apologize. Yeah, I've got no way of going back to the save file. So I apologize. Technically, I've cheated in this run. Anyway, he starts off with Torkoal as I start off with Emolga. Now, I expect him to go for a Yawn, so I just go for an Acrobatics. Unfortunately for me, though, he doesn't actually go for it. Therefore, on the next turn, I need to be safe and use a Volt Switch. This brings DD out, and he's actually boosted by Wise Glasses, meaning when I use Volt Switch with him, it's enough to take him out. Cause the Volt Switch gives me a free switch in, I'm able to bring Raichu out, and he brings out his Flygon. Flygon's gonna go for a ground attack, so I'm safe to bring in Emolga, and then I can Encore him into this and just finish him off with a couple of Acrobatics. After this, we've got Tertinator. Now, this thing knows Shell Trap, but doesn't actually do anything unless you use a physical move. Therefore, I Encore him into it and Volt Switch out. This brings out DD, and DD can make very short work of him with a couple of Thunderbolt and Parabolic charges. Now, his Goodra only knows Water moves and Thunder. Therefore, it really can't do anything against us as we've got the Dry Skin ability. On the turn I believe I'll be taking him out, I choose to use a Volt Switch, but he does manage to hold on. I bring out Lil, and Lil manages to do some decent damage with Draining Kisses. Obviously, though, it's knocked us pretty low by the time we're ready to take it out. After that, his Duraludon comes out, and this thing can do some pretty major damage, so I opt to use a Protect. I then send out the Pincurchin. Now, this thing should have probably been either the Luxio I can catch or Boltund, but unfortunately, I made my error. So, either way, I think this run would have gone the exact same, as I would have put Luxio in his place. However, I do use him to waste the final turns of Dynamax, and that allows me to bring out Stu. Now, Stu normally should be able to survive both of these attacks, but unfortunately for me, he actually hits me with a crit. This means my Ice Beam does incredible damage, but since I'm slower, I can no longer stay in. At this point, the only Pokemon that I can bring in is DD, as he's the only one healthy enough to take a hit. I bring it in, he gets Stone Edged. It knocks me down to 9 HP. But we've got to get buffeted yet. We survive on 1 health. What are the chances? Whew, thankfully we don't need to hit him multiple times. We just need 1 more Thunderbolt and he is gone. That was incredibly scary. We were then ready to take on Leon, but Chairman Rose decides he doesn't want that. He ruins the match by saying he's going to bring forth the darkest day. Tell you what, hot mate, it is pretty dark, isn't it? After that, though, we do have the battle against Chairman Rose. He starts off with a Scavalier as I start off with Dill. Now, I'd given Dill an air balloon as I was actually expecting him to try and hit me with the drill run here, but instead he goes for a Sword Stance as I set up a Shift Gear. This Shift Gear makes me strong enough to be able to take him out in 1 Fire Punch, and he hasn't even touched us yet. Berserker falls to 1 Overdrive. Ferrothorn obviously cannot withstand a quad weak Fire Punch. Now, Klinklang here would have gone down to 1 Fire Punch, but I kind of wanted to keep my air balloon, so I opted to go for Overdrive. It does have less of a chance to KO, but it is almost guaranteed. Of course, I end up missing the range, and since he used Shift Gear, he's now faster than me, so on the next turn, even though I take him out, he does hit me and pop my balloon. He then sends out his Copperaja. I know he's going to be going for a ground move, so I switch into Emolga. Now, I know I'm not able to take him out. Therefore, what I need to do is I need to bring in Boltund, who can take the rest of the Dynamax attacks. To be perfectly honest, I didn't actually need to sack him here. I could have absolutely got away with him living. However, the way I looked at it, though, is I'm not actually 100% sure about this AI. It does sometimes do stuff that I don't understand. Therefore, I didn't want to risk bringing Susie into it doing something weird because I'm on low health. This gives me a safe switch into Raichu. I use a Protect just to make sure he's going to use a ground move, and then that makes it free to bring in Susie. Susie uses a combination of Encores and Discharges, and it takes this thing out. We then have all the Eternatus stuff, but we can just skip past it because it was incredibly easy. Like, with the Dynamax battle, I taught myself Light Screen and Dig so I could just avoid the attacks and let the dogs out. It then progresses on to a few days later, and you might think we're ready to take on Leon. However, there is one Pokemon I want to grab before doing this. That Pokemon is Jolteon. One of my favourite Pokemon. You didn't really think I'd do an electric run without it, did you? It gets the name Drew, and now we are finally ready to take on Leon. He starts off with Aegislash as I start off with Drew. Aegislash is basically hardwired in every Pokemon game to use King Shield every other turn. Therefore, I can set up a workup on the turn it uses it. And with my Jolteon, I actually set it up so it's got the max in both defenses. Therefore, I know whatever move he's going to use against me, he's going to do next to nothing. So I can set up another move being Agility. After that, it is going to be free, as we know he's going to use King Shield, so I can Baton Pass into my Arctozolt. And that's it. That is the Leon fight 1. Arctozolt is mental when it's got a plus on special attack and attack. It's got an ice move, and it's got an electric move for any Pokemon that resists the ice. This is the reason I think I would have won this regardless of, like, using that Pink Urchin twice. I could have lost literally every Pokemon, and it wouldn't have made a difference. All I needed at this point was Arctozolt. Plus, I hadn't caught the Jolteon at that point, and there was a Luxray in the back that you guys never managed to see. Anyway, that's up for you guys to decide. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and have a great day.